Hey, what is going on everybody, and welcome to Fantasia. For today, we're going to be jumping into another session of Epic 7 now today. Got some more first impressions for you guys. That's right, this time around we're going to be jumping straight into the Frieren collaboration, and something a little bit different that I'm going to be doing this time around is, instead of doing a deep dive on each character in a different video, we're going to start off with just looking at each of the characters' kits here, and I'll give you my true first impressions on what I think they're going to be like in terms of the meta, in terms of RTA, and so on and so forth, right? So let's start off with Frieren, who is going to be coming in as an Earth Elemental Mage of the 5-star variety, of course, and she is going to have the star sign of a Leo, which comes with really high base attack, and she actually awakens into critical hit rate too, which is really good for a DPS unit. She actually has one of the best self-imprints in the game for a DPS unit as well, which is more critical hit chance, right? So with this 16, almost 17% crit rate plus the 23% that she awakens into, she's going to start off with 40% base crit if you max imprint her. You can use things like unknown slates and stuff from arena seasons to also imprint her here, which makes it so that you can really easily build her as a damage dealer, right? And she also has a team imprint of effectiveness too, to help bolster, you know, some debuff heavier teams, right? But overall, not that great of a team imprint. More specifically, use her for her self imprint. Her passive ability, her skill 2, is called the highest form of magic, where at the start of battle, she grants 40% resource increase to all allies. This is the first unit in the game that has this ability, and during battle, when soul is 4 or higher, grants defensive magic. After being attacked, increases the combat readiness of everyone on your team by 10%. Her resource increase effect allows her to increase fighting spirit and focus by 40%, which is great. You either get 2 focus bars or you get 40% fighting spirit. Both of those really, really nice for any units that are utilizing these kind of skills, right? But keep in mind, this is only at the start of the battle. It's not something that you can keep activating and keep using to replenish units' fighting spirits and focus throughout the fight. Now, defensive magic is also insane. So when you have 4 souls or higher, this is automatically granted to you, right? And it's a permanent undispellable buff where when attacked, consumes 4 soul, nullifying damage from skills. This is incredible, but it also is a really high cost. It's a high mana cost, right? This is really creative from Smilegate here to make this into her kit. Yeah, so she essentially will take like no damage. If you have souls on her at the start of the match, let's say a Taga Hell's Ancient Book with 20 souls, or maybe we'll get to Frieren's artifact a little bit later, but yeah, if you have 20 souls, you will be able to mitigate 5 damaging skills on her, right? Which is insane. Now, of course, you can whittle this down faster with things like dual attacks, fixed damage and stuff like that, right? That happens after an attack. You can really, you know, take away the souls quickly that way. But if you're using her in a cleave team, which is very soul heavy, like let's say you're bringing Zio, Record and Rowana, and other units, yeah, this can really quickly become super scary with a tanky, high damage Frieren just sitting there on the opponent's side. So definitely something to watch out for, right? Belly and stonks are definitely going to be going up with Frieren around now. So that's definitely kind of scary. All right, let's go with the skill 3 here. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this skill 3, but after getting increased attack to the caster for 3 turns, attacks all enemies with lightning magic, dispelling all buffs. Increases combat readiness of the caster by 50%, and penetrates the target's defense by 50%. This is a relatively normal skill cooldown, right? 4-turn skill cooldown with the skill enhance here, and you get an attack buff for 3 turns, which is great. It essentially is always an attack buff, right? It's almost 100% uptime here, which is fantastic. Now, the great thing is you do get to dispel all buffs on your opponent's side, so immortalities and things and such you can get rid of too. Just keep in mind, you're going to need to build Frieren with effectiveness for this to happen. She has no soul burn here to ignore effect resistance, and the combat readiness though is kind of nice for turn cycling her. and penetrating defenses, it's a double-edged sword. With Empyrean Ilanov being available and with the new RTA frenzy mechanics, there's a 25% chance that there's going to be a 30% defense penetration resistance on everybody in the match. So in those matches, you can't really use Frieren. However, outside of that, as there's no Empyrean Ilanov and that frenzy mechanic is not applied, Frieren is going to be absolutely amazing for some damage out there because she's self-buffs too. Very self-sufficient. Can definitely see her be used in more aggressive teams as well. Her stats do allow her to be used in faster teams, right? And the combat readiness gain is really nice too. So if you couple her with, let's say, Lone Wolf Peyra, who gives a swift attack buff, and you use her skill 3 here, you're going to gain 100% combat readiness, right? 50% from the swift attack buff, 50% from her actual skill, and you're going to be just lapping your opponents and doing a ton of damage, which is kind of nice, right? Finally, we get a really strong Earth DPS, right? I mean, I guess Ludwig, you can argue, used to be like a really strong Earth DPS mage, but I feel like Frieren just has way more protection just straight out the gate, right? At the start of the battle, and she has utility for the team. Okay, her skill 1 is just some ordinary offensive magic, where she attacks the enemy with magic and grants immunity to the caster for 1 turn. That's a great buff to have. And when it is the caster's turn, activates, not going to pronounce that, as an extra attack. But with her extra attack, you also gain an extra soul here. You get to attack all enemies with flame magic, and the damage dealt increases proportional to the amount of the enemy's lost health. So the weaker your opponents are in terms of HP, the more damage you do, which is great. This extra attack is going to be pretty nice. Keep in mind, Frieren has an attack buff from her S3, and she's going to be attacking here. Immunity is fantastic because while she's kind of invulnerable to damage, she is still susceptible to debuffs, and immunity with the S1 is just a great way for her to cover that base right there, right? You can still get the immunity buff stripped, of course, but still better than nothing. Still another 15% chance that you'll get to resist your opponent's strip too. So this is pretty good. But yeah, her soul burn is actually attached to her skill 1, where it consumes 10 souls and you increase the damage dealt of ordinary offensive magic. Sorry, I could not pronounce that word somehow there. But what you're going to see is that her damage is actually pretty decent, and her extra attack being an AoE is also just really nice. With extra attacks like this, it is kind of dangerous sometimes though. Keep in mind that your opponent's units can still counterattack, and if they do, it can potentially spell disaster, right? So we see here the soul burn damage is actually not that bad, about 12k damage on that Dragon Bride Senya over there, and it's pretty good. But again, do you want to risk using souls? If you have extra souls, sure, but if you don't, you might want to keep up your defensive magic. It depends on the position that you're in. Frieren can either be hoarding souls, right, for defensive purposes, or you can burning them real quick to try and take down your opponent, right? So that is something to keep in mind. Now, her artifact here is going to be called the Mirrored Lotus Ring, and I can't believe they finally did this, but this is a 5-star artifact where at the start of the first battle, if you max this out, you're going to start with 20 souls. This is Tagahel's ancient book, but that's not all. At the start of the first turn, she also has a 100% chance to gain 2 more souls. So this is a straight upgrade to Tagahel's ancient book. If you pull copies of this, honestly, keep them separated. Keep as many of these copies as possible. Over time, you should use bottles of knowledge to increase increase its imprints to get to plus 30. This is an incredibly strong artifact. Just think about how strong Tagahel's ancient book is. This is even better for generating souls, right? Now, she does only gain 2 souls, but keep in mind when she uses her skill 1, she gains a soul, and when she does her extra attack, she also gains another soul. So essentially, every time she takes a turn after she attacks with her skill 1, you're gonna have 4 souls for her defensive magic to come back into play, which is honestly a really nice touch that they added. But yeah, highly recommend pulling for Frieren and her artifact, namely her artifact here. It's gonna be super nice. I personally keep them all separated for the time being until you figure out what you want to do with them, and if you really do want to imprint them all together, right, which I would kind of suggest against. Again, these collaboration units and artifacts might never ever come back. So do keep that in mind. If you pull things, try and keep them separated until you realize what you're gonna do with them in the future, especially if you're a newer player. Please don't imprint these artifacts together. You can imprint the units, that's fine. Imprint Frieren, that's great if you pull multiple copies, but if you pull multiple copies of the artifact, keep them separated, okay? Alright, so that is Frieren's preview. Let's go ahead and take a look at Fern. Okay guys, you ready? It's time for Frieren's apprentice to step up to the plate, and my god, her animations are absolutely divine. Fern is gonna be great, and let's take a look at her kit, right? So with the hero introduction here, we see that Fern is actually gonna be a 5-star Ice Elemental Scorpio Mage, and Scorpio Mages have decent attack, it's not that bad, lower than Frieren's, but she also awakens into some critical hit chance, which is great. She also has lower base speed than Frieren too, but she does come with a bit of critical hit damage, which means she is going to be a bit more damage oriented as well. You're going to see that she does have one of the best self imprints as well, just like Frieren. Critical hit chance imprint, it's amazing. If you pull multiple copies of her, definitely try to imprint her to make it easier on yourself when building her, right? So when you have this 17% crit rate factored in with the 27% here, she's going to start off with 44% crit rate. It's going to be super easy to build her to max crit rate and then get a ton of damage on her too. Her team imprint, unfortunately, is just an attack imprint for the team, which isn't going to be too great. Normally HP imprint is the best imprint for the team. Alright, but moving on, we start off with Fern's passive, her skill 2, Exceptional Magical Talent, which she surely does have. At the start of the first battle, she will gain 5 focus with the skill enhancement here, and she'll increase speed by 15% and evasion by 20% for each focus that she has. This is insane. The evasion that she'll have is going to be full. At the start of the match, you're going to have 100% evasion, and then 15% speed though, times 5, that is 75% speed that you're going to be getting. That makes it so easy to build Fern. Now, keep in mind that if you're running base speed Fern and you lose all your focus, you're not going to be taking turns. It's going to be really hard to regain the focus, but you do want her at a decent moderate speed, right? And I think she's gonna be really good in terms of utility for zooming past your opponent, lapping them, right? She's going to be amazing. Now, when successfully evading, she does consume a focus, so keep that in mind. Anytime you're hit and you dodge, you're going to lose some of that speed. You're going to lose some of that evasion for the next hit, okay? And the good thing is, whenever that happens though, she does decrease her skill cooldowns by 1 turn. And so there is a little bit of like RNG involved here, where maybe you have 60% evasion, right, with 3 focus, and your opponent attacks you and you really want to evade there, but you don't lose the focus, right? So you still keep your speed, and you still have that 60% evasion for the next hit, but again, you don't get that skill cooldown decrease, which you might want in that moment. So it's kind of a give and take here, which is kind of interesting to see in a passive like this. But again, it's a great collab, it's the one of its kind, and we are seeing some very unique kits that Smilegate is coming out with here. So yeah, let's see her skill 3, the Spell to Kill Demons release. After granting increased attack to the caster for 1 turn, attacks the enemy with the Spell to Kill Demons. She penetrates the enemy's defense by 70%. Damage dealt increases proportional to the caster's speed, and she begins the first battle with the full skill cooldown count. So, if you want something to compare to, this is kind of like Lionheart Sirmia or Dark Corvus, where you start off the match and you don't have access to this skill. You're gonna need to build up to it, right? By decreasing your skill cooldowns. So how she does that, well, the great thing first of all is she gives herself an attack buff, which is amazing. Self-attack buffing units are great. You don't need to have another support unit with them, right? And the defense penetration also good. Again, double-edged sword a little bit. RTA, having that 25% chance to get a match where penetration resistance is applied, or Empyrean Ilanov being a decent counter into these types of defense pen units, right? right? But the damage dealt increases proportional to caster's speed is not something that's super negligible because you're getting 75% speed at the start of the match. So if you're opening, and of course you can't use the skill 3 at the start, but if you're opening and you have that much speed, you're hopefully going to be looping around, lapping your opponent, taking turns, and maintaining your focus gain, right? Maintaining your focus amount. And that's really important. That's the key to Fern, and utilizing her in battles is to balance the amount of focus that you have. Kind of like how with Frieren in battle, you're kind of balancing how many souls that you have. So it is kind of a bit more intensive on the player if you're going to be using her. You got to keep track, otherwise she can really easily be taken down. So yeah, that is something that's really cool to see though, and her animation is just top notch. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at her skill 1, the spell to kill demons. So, after granting increased attack to the caster for 1 turn, attacks the enemy with magic. When focus is 3 or higher, decreases skill cooldowns by 1 turn. Damage dealt increases proportional to the caster's speed. Now, this is actually really cool because, just like the problem I mentioned earlier, this is kind of the solution to it, and in a really accessible, form of skill 1, right? With this skill here, you essentially get to control your cooldowns by, again, lapping your opponent really quickly. Even if they're not attacking you and your focus is not decreasing, Fern is not going to be a sitting duck. They either have to attack her a few times to get her focus less than 3, or they're going to have to not attack her because they're scared of giving you skill cooldown decreases, and then you can just do it yourself. So this actually puts a lot of pressure on the opponent now to kind of deal with her in a timely fashion. Keep in mind that she also gains focus with her skill 1 here too, every single time she attacks, which is really good. And again, the more you attack, the more focus you gain, the more turns you take, the more speed you get, the more evasion you get. Yeah, you get the point, right? She is a very self-sufficient package, and I think that's what I really like about these Frieren collab units. They're not reliant on each other to go into battle with, but they're really good at maybe being splashed into team comps here and there. And the damage being dealt proportional to her caster's speed is also amazing, again, because you're gaining it through the focus, right? Her soul burn only requires 10 souls, and it ends up attacking all enemies. And the great thing about it is that it cannot trigger a dual attack or a counter attack. The counter attack is amazing, but the dual attack is also sometimes, it comes in handy, right? Against units like Lionheart Sirmia, sometimes you don't want a chance to dual attack. Sometimes you have a unit like Afternoon Soaked Flan on your team and you don't want to dual attack with her on that turn. Yeah, that's not bad. And the damage overall is not the greatest thing ever, right? You can see that she's dealing like, 5,000, 6,000, 8,000 damage. It's not bad. But again, not the greatest thing ever, but she makes up for it with her very consistent damage and her burst from her S3. Okay, looking here at her artifact, we have the butterfly hair ornament, and this actually just increases her attack from between 10 to 20%. At plus 15, it's going to be 15%. And when you're attacking, you gain a barrier equivalent to 50% of your attack for 2 turns. And this can be activated once per turn. So that's actually really strong. It essentially means you'll always have a barrier on your side as long as you have high attack, and she gives herself an attack buff, right, whenever she attacks. Yeah, this is really synergistic with her entire kit. 50% attack, this honestly reminds me of Chatty, but Chatty is a defensive artifact where, if you're attacked when you're below 50% health, you'll get a nice barrier that scales with your attack stat. Here, it's more of in your control. Not only do you get the 20% attack here, which helps with the barrier anyway, but anytime you attack, it has no cooldown. It's just once per turn, right? So she'll attack, she'll get the barrier, and if they can't break the barrier, the next time Fern laps you, because she has speed, you're going to attack again, you're going to replenish your barrier. It's going to be really difficult to get rid of her, especially because she has evasion built in as well. So I think Fern is going to be pretty cool to see. Frieren is going to be coming out first though on September 25th, so in a week. And Fern is going to be coming out the week after that on October 2nd. So guys, you're definitely going to need to save up your bookmarks and such. This is a really good artifact as well. I am tempted to try to get more copies of it to put on Roy, to maybe put on Sylvan Sage Vivian. I think it just has so much potential for use on other mages too. Yeah, so if you get multiple copies of this artifact, also try to keep them separate because you might regret combining them all later, because again, there's no guarantee that these collab units will ever get rerun, okay? And so, with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at our last unit, Stark. Alright guys, here we go, Stark preview. I'm very excited for my boy. I think honestly he probably has like the best animations out of the three, which is very surprising because he is going to be free. So Stark is going to be a 5-star fire elemental warrior, and his base stats honestly are incredible. He is a Capricorn warrior, so he actually does have quite a bit of HP and defense, and his self-imprint is also the best that you can get, which is critical hit chance. He has low base speed, but he makes up for that honestly with how much bulk that he has. His attack stat is relatively low, but he is going to be an HP scaler, right? And his unfortunately his imprint for the team is going to be defense. Again, like I mentioned earlier when I talked about Fern, HP is the best imprint right now currently. Defense is not as good, but it is okay to increase defensive capabilities of your teammates. Alright, let's start here with Stark's skill 2, Master's Lessons. When an ally is attacked, gains 10 fighting spirit, and when fighting spirit is full, activates Warrior Strike on the attacker. This is really important. This is any time an ally is attacked, right? So you can gain 10 for every ally that's attacked. So if you're fighting an AoE unit, this is actually pretty decent. The Warrior Strike consumes 100 fighting spirit, and then you'll attack the enemy consecutively and increase combat readiness of the caster by 50% before resetting cooldown of Lightning Strike. Damage dealt increases proportional to the caster's max health. Alright, a lot to unpack here, right? When your fighting spirit is full, you will consume all of it. You'll attack the whoever triggered this passive, and then you'll gain 50% combat readiness, and then you reset this your skill 3, right? That's a lot. Not only are you dealing damage to whoever just attacked you, but you're pushing yourself up, and you reset your skill 3, which means you can come in for a really strong finishing blow or just a really strong opening hit. And Stark being essentially like a tank, right? A warrior tank here is really cool. You can see everyone got hit there on his side. He's able to retaliate. He's able to push himself up. He's dealing a decent chunk of damage, not the greatest amount of damage, but a decent chunk of damage there. His skill 3 is going to come in with Lightning Strike, where you attack the enemy by slamming down with an axe. Penetrates the target's defense by 50%. Again, a double-edged sword. We mentioned this with Frieren, we mentioned this with Fern. Empyrean Ilanov is out there, and the Frenzy mechanic from RTA can screw this over if you're trying to use him. But overall, penetrating defense is pretty good when fighting tankier units. Now, the damage dealt increases proportional to the caster's max health, and damage dealt increases every time the skill is used, stacking up to 3 times. Think about Disciplinary Prefect Arya and how you stack up her damage with her skill 3, right? Units like that. This is definitely going to be used in longer fights. You're going to bring Stark into longer fights where your opponent's chipping away at you. They're not dealing a whole ton of damage. They're just hitting you consecutively many times, and you want to keep proccing your passive by getting Fighting Spirit, resetting your Lightning Strike, and then attacking your opponents there. But it does have a cooldown, so nothing's saying that you cannot start and open up with a skill 3, and then later when you get hit, your skill 2 will help you, reset your skill 3, and then so on and so forth. So it's kind of nice. We're seeing a general trend here, right? Fern and Stark here both are essentially able to reset their cooldowns really quickly on their attacks. Now, he does have a soul burn, but it's a very basic one, 10 souls to increase the damage dealt, which is okay on the skill 3. You definitely want to be using the soul burn here if you're trying to finish somebody off. The damage can definitely rack up, and it can be kind of nice. So we can see here his damage output. Try to pause at the right moment. And there we go. So Fallen Cecilia is a pretty tanky unit. Now, he does have Rage buff here, and the Fallen Cecilia does have Indomitable. So, Stark does have a bit of attack here, and then FCC does have extra defense. But keep this in mind, his skill 3 is supposed to penetrate defense, but there's an Empyrean Ilanov on the other side, and her passive is in play. So this lightning strike, remember, penetrates defense by 50%. Yeah, there's a 30% damage defense penetration resistance on the opponent's side here. He should be dealing a lot more damage than this if the Empyrean Ilanov is not there, so that is something to definitely keep in mind. Alright, last but not least, we have Stark's skill 1, Vanguard Strike, where he attacks the enemy with an axe and inflicts Provoke for 1 turn. This is a great way to take some pressure off of your allies, right? He's essentially a tank, like a knight, but he's not a knight, he's a warrior, right? Very fitting for him in the story. But his damage dealt increases proportional to the caster's max health. Nothing really too special here in that case, but it does potentially open the door for him to become a kind of a counter unit. All right, we'll talk about builds and stuff in later videos when we get our hands on these units, right? Stark is going to be available for free once the update drops, so do log in day 1 to make sure you snag a copy of him. The great thing about this though is that his skill 1 does help him gain 20 fighting spirit, which is nice. So if you're getting hit by an AoE, you're gaining 40 fighting spirit. If he S1s, he gains 20. Let's say you get hit by another AoE, that's another 40. Boom, you have 100 fighting spirit. You're going to reset your skill 3. You're going to keep dishing out more damage. I think even though he's a free unit, I think he has good potential here. He's a very straightforward character, right? Just like a tank normally is in most kind of RPGs and such. But I think if he's able to actually cycle as quickly as I think he will, then his damage potential might actually be really, really high. Just again, keep in mind that you definitely don't want to be fighting Empyrean Ilanov on the other side without sealing her first. Okay, moving on here, we have his artifact, the Jumbo Berry Special, which is also going to be free. If a unit's free, their artifact is usually free as well, just by playing the event and participating and such and logging in. But his effect here is a very basic effect. It's warrior exclusive, but it's increasing the damage of a single target attack from 10 to 20%. Because it's free, you'll be able to max it out, so you will be able to get this 20% increase in damage. The issue with this is that normally when you're using a warrior, you're probably going to be using Sigurd's Scythe, you're probably using Golden Rose. There are just so many other really strong warrior artifacts out there that it really isn't quite worth using this over other things, but this might be a decent addition to your artifact roster, and you can probably use it on some PvE units here and there and stuff, and it could probably be okay. But yeah, in general, I think there are better artifacts that give more utility that Stark would definitely like to benefit from, especially since he's a bruiser, he's provoking, he's taking hits. Sigurd's Scythe could definitely be worth it for him to just heal himself up, right, with all the damage that's being dealt into him. It also gives him some extra attack, which is also kind of nice. But yeah, out of these 3 guys, let me know what who you think is the strongest one. Who's the biggest winner out of them all? But I'm super excited to be able to pull all 3. So once this update drops, you guys definitely want to subscribe. You don't want to miss out. I will be showcasing each and every single one of these units in Arena, in Guild War, and in RTA. But with that being said though, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.